Episode 3. Welcome to S.H.I.E.L.D. Act 1. The Soldier, the Defender. Connor and Daisy arrive at the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ. Welcome to S.H.I.E.L.D., Daisy tells him as they walk into the building. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in both professional wear and tactical gear populate the building as Connor sticks close to Daisy. The environment feels similar to the police stations that he had grown so accustomed to, but also different and new. Standing against the wall and wait for the duo is the S.H.I.E.L.D. director Alfonso McKenzie. Daisy, how are you? He asks, smiling warmly at her. Daisy tells him that things are great apart from their tech being stolen. Ah, right. And is this the answer to our problem? He asks, gesturing to Connor. Yep, this is Connor Campbell. Daisy replied as Connor seems to be enamored by his surroundings and isn't paying attention. Well, nice to meet you. I know you can help. Fill me in on your background. Well, nice to meet you. I know you can help. Fill me in on your background. Alfonso says to Connor as Connor snaps out of his trance and firmly shakes Alfonso's hand. Thanks for bringing me in on this. I just need some new armor. The DODC took what NYPD gave me. Connor says, his voice reluctant and almost annoyed when mentioning the DODC. Alfonso shakes his head at hearing the name and mentions that the DODC is insufferable and always in everyone's business. Although, I guess it's kind of their job, unfortunately. Alfonso adds, as he signals for Daisy and Connor to follow him. The trio began walking through the sliding doors as Alfonso gestures to the different rooms, explaining what they're for. In the day and age we live in, our tech is constantly upgrading. What you see here is rapid innovation. We already did some remodeling to the HQ. Alfonso tells Connor as they pass by glass rooms with S.H.I.E.L.D. agents outfitting themselves with different pieces of gear. Connor takes note of everything, imagining if the police had tech like this. Fun fact about this place, this is where Steve Rogers woke up from his beauty sleep. Alfonso tells Connor with a slight chuckle at his own joke. Yeah, and then ran off and didn't recognize the city he grew up in. Daisy says. Alfonso chuckles and asks Daisy if she'd be able to recognize New York after being asleep for 70 years. Fair enough, she replies. The trio finally get to the end of the hallway, stopping at some tinted sliding doors that require a retinal scan to enter. Alfonso's face becomes one of pure sincerity as he looks back at Connor. Listen, I don't want you thinking that you're obligated to help because of Lincoln's sacrifice. You're an officer of the NYPD and one of their best. With that being said, don't take on more than you can handle. Alfonso says to Connor. Connor runs his tongue along the back of his teeth as his eyes slowly shift to the side as if he's thinking. S.H.I.E.L.D. has done a lot to help humanity. I know that. Link told me a lot of stuff and Daisy talked about it the whole drive here. When I see it, it's about time somebody gives back. Connor says, his voice stern and his face one of indignation. Alfonso smiles and nods to Connor. Well, without further ado, he begins to say before pausing midway through the sentence and activating the retinal scan and looking into it, causing the doors to slide open, revealing something that causes Connor's face to become one of amazement. Alfonso stands next to Connor, and Daisy stands on his other side. Alfonso then finally finishes the sentence. Welcome aboard, Defender of S.H.I.E.L.D., he says. Act 2. Test Run. Connor's eyes gaze upon something new. In a holding case stands a suit of high-tech armor that was seemingly made for him. Connor notes the dark gray color that contrasts with the white of his SWAT armor which had been taken hours earlier. This is our iteration of the Northeast Soldier armor, Alfonso says, introducing Connor to the armor. We used some highly modified schematics of an earlier model War Machine armor, and after tweaking it to a more up-to-date standard, voila, Alfonso says as Connor slowly walks closer to the armor. Its offensive capabilities are, well, like that of a War Machine suit, although slightly altered to match S.H.I.E.L.D. combat tendencies and patterns, Daisy says, strutting in next to Connor. So it's like everything my old armor had, but more, Connor says, not taking his eyes off the suit. And better, Daisy says. Suddenly, Connor's phone begins to vibrate and he reads the caller ID to himself. Shifadri. Connor exhales and answers the phone, wondering what could be happening. Battery low, shootout, arms deal, thugs, Hunts Point, hurry, is all Connor hears before the call drops, his face becoming one of dismay as he takes his phone away from his ear. What's the matter? Daisy asks. Shootout in Hunts Point, I gotta go, Connor says as he turns to walk out of the room. However, Alfonso hears his words. Perfect, a test run, he says. Connor turns his head to Alfonso before being told to take the suit and get a feel for it. You use it for this, and if there's anything that's gotta be changed, you let me know, Alfonso explains to Connor. Connor's eyes focus back on the suit, and he turns to Alfonso before saying, "Alright, test run it is." Minutes later, Connor is suited, a full mask covering his face, giving a view of a highly streamlined heads-up display, but more advanced than what he's normally used to. He holds a prototype assault weapon in his hands, as he prepares to take off from the flight bay. "Alright, Connor, this suit's got an onboarding AI voice inspired by Tony Stark's designs. It should kick in right about now," Daisy yells to Connor. Connor prepares to hear a typical GPS-esque voice, but is surprised when he hears the voice of Carol Danvers. "Hold on a second, that's Captain Marvel's voice," Connor yells excitedly. "It's a favor. She'd do anything for S.H.I.E.L.D. And S.W.O.R.D., but definitely S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, are you ready, Defender of S.H.I.E.L.D.?" Alfonso says to Connor. Connor exhales as he looks up. He can see the sky and realizes that he's finally able to be back up there again. "Ready," Connor replies. "Powering thrusters," Connor hears the voice say, and suddenly Connor blasts off, reminiscent in the way of the War Machine. Connor flies into the air before straightening up and flying between buildings, his moves fluid and agile. "Altitude low, decreasing flight speed," Connor hears Carol's voice say. "Carol Danvers is incredible. I can't believe that you actually got her voice in my suit," Connor says. Daisy narrows her eyes and smirks before asking Connor if that's a hint of affection she hears in his voice. "Sounds like somebody has a crush," Alfonso says, teasing Connor. "Yeah, it's going on 5 years now, sue me," Connor says, as he begins to approach the area of the crime. Daisy shuts off the communication relay to Connor before looking over at Alfonso and saying, "We need to set them up right now." The Northeast Soldier targeting system works rapidly in front of his eyes. It identifies the thugs, deeming non-lethal force necessary for them, and preparing the homing taser. The Northeast Soldier stops on a dock and hovers as the firefight continues in front of him. Bullets whiz past his fellow officers, and in a way that's quicker than his original armor, the visor HUD targets the criminals, and from the shoulder of the armor, multiple taser shots are fired, and on contact, thugs are brought to the asphalt, incapacitated. This causes the officers to turn their heads to look at who had just done that, and in the air, Connor hovers before retracting the helmet and looking down at his fellow police officers. "The Northeast Soldier is back," he says.